I want us to take a look at this this slide. Direct your attention here to this first slide for a second. All right. In January or February of 1964, about 6 months before the Civil Rights Act of 1964 would be signed by Lyndon Johnson, right? Singer and songwriter Sam Cooke released his soulful masterpiece, "A Change Gonna Come." Yeah. The civil rights movement was in full swing when Cooke manages to channel the feeling of that generation that had been that Dr. King had put it was engaged in a creative battle to end the long night of racial injustice. All right. Now, in the second verse of that iconic song, Sam Cooke says something very interesting. He says, "It's been too hard living." I don't have enough soul to sing it. If you're going to cover that song, you got to make sure you come right with it. I ain't even going to attempt it, you know. He says, "It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die because I don't know what's up there beyond the skies. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know a change is going to come." Now, we could ask, Sam, what are you talking about? You grew up in the church, right? Your daddy was a preacher. You launched your career doing gospel music. What do you mean you don't know what's up there beyond the skies, right? What do you mean by that, right? But see, those are the words of somebody who has drifted away from their spiritual foundations, right? Now, with the end of that verse, it tells us that, there's still some hope. Hope hasn't entirely left him, right? But nevertheless, his words are still laden with fear, subtle despair, and uncertainty, right? I think in many ways, Sam Cooke gave verse to maybe a foretelling of the kind of mass uncertainty that we see in our communities today. So for example, you got Kendrick Lamar. I'm not going to diss him. You can take a breath, man. we're gonna be kind to Kendrick Lamar today, but and his most recent album, or a recent album, in the song "Fear," he says, "Why God, why God, why I gotta suffer? Pain in my heart carries burdens full of struggle. Why God, do I gotta bleed? Every stone thrown at you is resting at my feet," right? I think that melody of uncertainty is still echoing today, right? I want to look at some stats right quick. Okay, now this is from a Pew Research study that was done fairly recently, I think in 2014 or something like that. It says that about 83% of African Americans believe in God, right? Now that's not surprising because even when you're dealing with folks who may not be in the church today or whatever, or maybe they even claim to be or just have just fallen out of favor with the church, I guess you could say. I'm saying they fell out of love with the church maybe and the traditions associated with it. They'll still be quick to say, "Oh no, I believe in God." They'll tell you that real quick. I just don't rock with those church folks and so on and so forth. But I believe in God. So it's not surprising that 83% of African Americans firmly believe that God exists. But they also ask another question, about absolute right or wrong. Is morality fixed? Is there a definite right or wrong? And what you see in this graph is that it showed that 70% of African Americans said that morality is situational. So while 83% of us, believe that God exists, what we see is a majority of us don't apply God in terms of how we live our lives. There's a disconnect between our belief in God and how we live. Okay? And these stats tell an interesting story. All right? Furthermore, we take a step further, they ask another question about, where do you get your sources of guidance from for right and wrong? And as we see, 43% would say religion, but then 43% say common sense. So you have a generation of people, where at least a large segment of them are grappling with moral issues, and they're not looking to religion or God for guidance. They're just trying to figure it out. This is where our community is today, right? That uncertainty. We don't know what's going on. We're just trying to figure it out. Oop. There we go. Now, we also have, unfortunately, there's a growing group among the African American community, which is referred to as the unaffiliated. Now, these are the folks who maybe they believe in God, but they don't subscribe to any particular spiritual tradition. They believe in God, and they kind of maybe a mixed match of different beliefs, or they're just kind of undecided. Now, this group, the belief that God, or whether God exists or not, drops down to about 57%. So among those who are unaffiliated, you have the majority of them don't believe that God exists at all, right? This is where our communities are today. This right here shows 43%. You have of those who identify as unaffiliated, where you have that higher, grouping of those who don't believe that God exists. Among those between 18 and 29, you see that you have 43%, 37% between those who are 30 and 49, right? So a higher number of younger folk are either just totally disconnected from the belief in God, or if they do believe in God, they're not affiliated with any fixed religious tradition, particularly the church, right? So I said that to say, that brings me back really to that melody of uncertainty that I was talking about, right? And it seems like it's growing louder and louder in our community. So when you're scrolling through Facebook and you see something like this, right? That's that singing of an uncertainty. I'm saying, like with Sam Cooke, singing uncertainty. That's what that is, Or when somebody like a Killer Mike, can release his Netflix documentary Trigger Warning, right? Where he spends a whole episode mocking Jesus and, in his mind, debunking Christianity. That's singing uncertainty. That's this generation singing uncertainty. That's what that is. That's the sound of uncertainty. And what I would suggest to you is that for too long, the black church has been tone deaf. We see these things, right? We hear it. See, when you're tone deaf, it's not that you don't hear any sound. It's just that you can't rightly interpret what you're hearing. You see what I'm saying? So we see the Facebook posts. We see Killer Mike saying what he wants to say. We see, we watch D.L. Hughley when he's talking about whatever he's talking about, this in the church and all this kind of stuff. We see these things, but we haven't rightly interpreted it. These things are the sound of uncertainty in our community. And this is why apologetics is so important. All right, now, I've used a big word there. What is apologetics? Okay? I'm going to give this definition, and we'll get into the scriptural back and forth here in just a second. So I'm actually just read this off the screen. Christian apologetics, broadly speaking, is a field of Christian theology which attempts to present a rational basis for the Christian faith and defending the faith against objections. Okay? That's what apologetics is. Now I get it all the time. When I refer to apologetics, people say, I don't need to apologize for nothing. Say, what you apologizing for? What is, I get that all the time. It's because we just use that word and we don't really know the root of it. So let's take a look at that. The word apologetics comes from the word apologia. It means to give a defense. And we actually find that word in Scripture. In 1 Peter 3:15, it says, but honor the Messiah as Lord in your hearts, and always be ready to give a defense to anybody who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. Okay? That's 1 Peter 3:15. So, in other words, in these days and times, we can't afford to have a my pastor said kind of faith. Right? We can't afford to do that. I use the analogy of a grandma's cookout all the time on my show. So, and I think I actually mentioned it last night, where you have that cousin who comes to the cookout. Last year they was named Charles. This year they, Shabazz something or other. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's real. That's what happened in my family, right? I had a cousin of mine, we grew up in church and all that kind of stuff. And, he came to the cookout one year or maybe it's Thanksgiving or something, one of those family gatherings. He's like, man, I don't rock with that stuff no more. I'm on this Egyptology stuff. I'm on this Kemetic stuff now. These are things that, people email me all the time with experiences like that. So it's not a problem that's out there somewhere. This is in our families, it's in our communities. And again, like I said, we've been tone deaf to this kind of stuff, to where we're not rightly educating ourselves and addressing it. Does that make a lot of sense? Okay. So with that being said, kind of before I move a little bit further, in addition to being able to give a defense for the Christian faith, okay, apologetics actually has value in terms of being a disciple of Christ, right? Because as you're studying, I love philosophy, you know what I'm saying? So you're studying philosophical arguments for God's existence, or understanding better the nature of God, or digging into, how God, sovereignly worked in African American history or African history more broadly. You know what I'm saying? Like you get to understand more about God, His nature, what He's done in the world, what He is doing. All those things are helpful in terms of our walk with the Lord, right? And so, Christian apologetics is not just about debating people and just getting in people's face and shouting them down. That's not what apologetics is about. It's about growth, whether for yourself or for somebody else to grow closer to the Lord. That's what it's really all about. Okay? I'll say a few things here, and I want to open it up. Now, actually, I had to go and change my slide. If you'll notice, the title of this session was "What is Urban Apologetics?" I think. Oh no, actually, you can't turn me around, but it was an emphasis on "quote unquote" urban apologetics. And for a long time, I've been uncomfortable with that term because we don't all live in urban areas, right? If you look at African American history, we've always had a nomenclature problem, right? We was Negro, colored, this, that. It's always a name, black. Some people don't like that. Are we Africans in America? Are we African Americans? It was always that nomenclature thing. And I think that though the term urban apologetics gets thrown around a lot, I think it's actually an extension of that, because it doesn't quite capture exactly what we mean. It puts people in the vicinity of what we're talking about. You kind of get it, but it's not quite a good fit. So talking to my brother Damon Richardson just a minute ago, he made some really great points and helped me to frame things differently. So I went and changed the slide. So what is culturally contextualized apologetics, right? I think that's a lot better. It gives us a better, a broader lens. And I'm not sure if we discussed this or not, but I think it helps people who really don't know what we're talking about to be able to draw a connection to what they're already dealing with and what we're presenting to them. So I think that's excellent. But that's what this conference is about, right? I've learned some things, and I was able to adapt. So I think it's so important to understand culturally contextualized apologetics and how it applies to us here, or the role that it can play in the black church, right? So what do we mean by it? Here's kind of a broad definition, but when we're talking about culturally contextualized apologetics, specifically with respect to what's going on in the African American community, I think we're talking about engaging the broad range of questions about and objections to Christianity that are circulating among people of African descent, particularly in the Western world, and to some extent other minorities in the West. And for the most part, and maybe this is where the urban part ties in, the objections about, or questions about and objections to Christianity that we encounter, we're doing apologetics in this context, tend to be put forward by groups that initially took root or maybe, kind of blew up in urban areas. But as a result of like the internet and hip hop, things of that nature, they're able to have a broader reach, right? I remember I was a huge Wu-Tang fan back in the day. You know what I'm saying? Like if Wu-Tang dropped something, I had it. You know what I'm saying? Whether I dubbed it from my cousin or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And about 80% of what they was talking about, I don't know what them dudes was talking about. You know what I'm saying? It just sounded hot to me. You know what I'm saying? I was like, it was just dope. I mean, but them dudes, man, they was spitting 5%er, God body. Now here we go. Here he go. Notice I didn't say nothing about the West Coast. You know what I'm saying? I knew what they was talking about, but it was trash, so I ain't really rock with it. So that's what that was. Yeah. You got that bully pulpit going on right there. I got the mic. I say whatever I want about the West Coast hip hop. But seriously, man. I mean, when I look back on it, as I got older and could understand what they were saying. I mean, they were talking some Hebrew Israelite stuff, man. I remember there was a guy, Killer Priest, who dropped a song called Bible, right? And I took it to my mom. I'm like, Mom, look, this guy's talking about the Bible. This dude, Killer Priest was a straight Hebrew Israelite. I didn't know that. It just I heard him using scripture and things like that, so I figured it was cool. It was that was one of the songs that I would listen to on Sunday. I tried to stay away from secular music on Sunday growing up in church, but I would pop him in, stuff like that. So I don't even know where I was going with that, to be honest with you, but But we do have these groups, who take root and maybe kind of blow up in urban areas. But now, like I said, because of YouTube, I just ran into this guy sent me a link to a particular false teacher on YouTube who's attracting a great deal of folks. He's got like 526,000 subscribers. Completely anti-church, anti-God, anti-anything related to Christianity. Over 500,000 followers on YouTube, right? This is not a small issue. This is a big issue. And this is something I do. This is all I do. This is what urban apologetics is what I do. I just heard about this guy like maybe 2 weeks ago. Just to kind of show you like how big of a thing it is. We got a lot of ground to cover, and we need to be prepared. So in the same way, I kind of look at apologetics being like music. I mean, you got jazz, you got rap, rock, whatever. There's different genres. And so I see culturally contextualized apologetics as being like just a genre of the broader field of apologetics. You know what I'm saying? I think that we have to embrace that, harness it, and then employ it in the black church. So just a few things. I want to make sure I open it up to questions. But before I do that, I just want to maybe identify some of the players. So on your top left-hand side here, you'll see these guys in all black. Those are Hebrew Israelites, right? Before, we would typically call them black Hebrew Israelites. They would call themselves black Hebrew Israelites. But now, they've kind of shied away from that term. You know what I'm saying? You might see them stand out on the street corner, maybe berating white people, or if somebody says they're Christian and they're black, they're going to berate them. And, their essential doctrine, well, I guess actually I can say they have two central doctrines that any of them will hold to, regardless of what denomination or camp of Hebrew Israelites they are. And one is the notion is that, African Americans, either all or at least some, are the Hebrews that the Bible speaks of. That's typically how they'll phrase it. I'm saying they believe that the actual Hebrews of Scripture, And so typically they'll base that on passages like the central one would be something like Deuteronomy. I think I have it on here. Oh, no, I don't. Deuteronomy 28, right? Where they'll go through the curses, that's listed in Deuteronomy 28 and say, hey, nobody else has, fulfilled all these curses. So therefore, that's kind of like our identity, spiritual litmus test to say, hey, we are the folks that fulfill these curses. Therefore, we're the Israelites. One of the, it was a Deuteronomy 28, verse 60. It talks about how, actually, I'll just go ahead and read it. It says, and the Lord shall bring thee again into Egypt with ships, by the way whereof I spoke unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there shall you be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. And so they'll say that what other people were brought by ship, were brought into slavery by ships, But with Hebrew Israelites, it's helpful to know a little bit of history, so you can kind of shoot through their claims. But more importantly, I think when dealing with them, the most important thing you can do is to know sound theology. I'm saying because the other side of their theology, they tend to be, in terms of the central claims, they tend to be non-Trinitarian. They tend to believe that God is just unitary, as in just God the Father. That's it. You know what I'm saying? If there are some that are Trinitarian, I mean, I haven't come across them. But they typically are non-Trinitarian. And so just knowing how to show from Scripture, that Jesus is God in the same sense that the Father is God. And being able to demonstrate from Scripture that God is one being, existing in three persons, and giving them scriptures as to why, that goes a long way. That in and of itself, just presenting that sound theology, that's apologetics in their regard. So that's them. Then you also have, and I won't spend as much time, you also have the Comedics. I don't know how to go back. Oh, okay, there we go. Wow, just hit the back button. That helps. You got the Comedics, and so on the bottom left-hand side, you hear people, they kind of want to draw from Egyptian theology, philosophy, and culture and establish their worldview on that. So those are going to be what you call your Comedics. So these are the guys that are going to typically make arguments like Jesus was a copycat of Horus. Or, Jesus was, he never existed. The whole Bible is taken from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. The Ten Commandments were stolen from the 42 Principles of Ma'at. All those kinds of things. Basically, Christianity is just fabrication from Egyptian mythology. Those are the kinds of arguments that they're going to present, right? And so, one of the things that helps with them, a simple argument that I pose to them is that, okay, you believe that this Egyptian theology to be true, in some sense or another. What evidence do you have? Can you point me to some evidence as to why, I should believe that it's true? And typically they'll say, well, the ancestors believed ... They say, it's like, well, okay, cool. I mean, the ancestors believed it. But I'm asking you, why should I believe it? Just because the ancestors believed X, Y, and Z doesn't give you any reason to suggest that, what the ancestors believed was true. You got to take it a step further. Give me some evidence. And that's where they really get hung up. More can be said about that. Then we have atheism. And I like to kind of make a distinction here because there's different people mean different things when they refer to atheism, right? Now you do have what I think are at least two forms of what they may call black atheism. So one form is just basically the belief that there is no God, or a hard uncertainty that there's a God. Some of them will put it that way. And it tends to have like a Afrocentric flavor to it. So it'd be the person who doesn't believe there's a God and they want to ask about, well, if God exists, then why were we in slavery? You're going to have that person. That's kind of your black atheist. But then there's the other kind of black atheist where they don't necessarily not believe that there's a God. They actually just reject the Christian God. And they call themselves atheists. Or they'll reject the God in the Abrahamic faith, whether it be Islam, Judaism, or Christianity. They just reject that specific God. And they kind of like the feel of the term atheism because it's got an edge to it. So they just call themselves black atheists for that reason, right? So there's your kind of your broad brush understanding of black atheism. And then you have groups like the Moors. That's going to be your bottom right-hand side. And they're kind of like a spinoff of Islam. They've got a real Islamic flavor to them. They're going to say things like, the real focus needs to be on changing your nationality to be a Moor, and then you can have all these benefits and so on and so forth. That's kind of like their main thing. They're really into like law and, nationality. That's their big deal. So before I close out, I just want to kind of draw a common thread here. One thing that we see among at least the major groups, when it comes to, these kind of ethnocentric groups that are gaining traction in the African American community is an emphasis on identity, right? All of them are going to have some sort of identity angle, right? So the Hebrew Israelite is going to say that, you're not black, you're not African American. Our people were in slavery, and that, satisfies Deuteronomy 28:68. You're actually an Israelite. You know what I'm saying? You're the Jew. You're one of the Jews that the Bible speaks of. And so then they go from there to, okay, well, because you're a Jew, you need to be following the laws. You need to be accepting the Judaic, teachings or what have you, right? Whereas a Kemetic would say, you're not African American, you're not black. We come from Africa. We need to be deriving our identity from there. The Egyptians had a great empire on the continent of Africa that spread all throughout Africa in terms of influence. Therefore, you can, tap into that and build your identity there. So you need to be not rocking with the Abrahamic faith. You need to accept the belief that God is the one, as is described, they believe, is described in Kemeticism. So there's always going to be this identity hook, and then it's going to be to say, okay, well, now I'm going to point you to the theology that coincides with this identity piece, right? And it really just plays on this whole notion that Christianity is supposedly, according to them, the white man's religion. They're going to throw that out. It's kind of like the first jab. For anybody who's into boxing, the jab is going to set up everything else, right? So that's kind of like their jab. Christianity is the white man's religion, and, therefore you need to reject that. The Christianity puzzle piece of your worldview is not fitting with your ethnic puzzle piece, and therefore you need to get rid of that Christianity part, right? That's kind of where they're going to come, and then they're going to come with everything else, okay? And there's so many different arguments. I wish I had time to go into all of it, but, this notion that, Christianity is the white man's religion is just preposterous. At this point, Christianity has been on the African continent for 2,000 years, with at least 1,500 of that coming before the transatlantic slave trade. And we could get into how, Christianity, you can't even get out of the first century without seeing Christianity in Egypt. You can't talk about the Bible. So, for example, when you look at your Bible, right, you got your Old Testament and New Testament. Where do we get those terms from? From a North African theologian named Tertullian. So you can't even open your Bible without seeing Christian influence. The term Trinity traces back to Tertullian, which is the Latin word, comes from the Latin word Trinitas. There's so many different ways you can go with it. But I want to say, I want to kind of leave it there because I want to make sure I give opportunity for us to kind of engage a little bit. So I want to open up, for questions. Does anybody have you had encounters, with any of these groups, or have any questions that are kind of burning for you that maybe we can kind of throw on the table and, give some examples. Yes, ma'am.